The history of voting in the UK can be traced back to the Magna Carta, sealed in 1215, which was the beginning of limiting royal power and the monarch becoming answerable to the law. The right to justice, fair trial, and equality before the law were introduced, which remain to this day. This document is seen as a crucial step in English democracy and the erosion of absolute monarchy. By the 1830s, voting had been established due to the Great Reform Act, but only for wealthy landowners. In 1832, this was extended to middle-class men, but not the working class, women, and young people. In 1918, new reforms meant that all men over 21 and some wealthy women over 30 could vote. By 1928, this was extended to all men and women over 21, universal suffrage. In 1969, the voting age was lowered to 18, as 18-year-olds were working, paying taxes, and being called to war, so deserved the right to vote.
In order to understand the significance of the basic right to vote, we have to take a look at the global sacrifices which have been made to achieve it. Around the world, people have risked and even lost their lives fighting for the right to vote. This isn't just a political debate, it's a human struggle that has shaped our history. It always seems impossible until it's done. In order to only deal with a few key figures, let's start with this one, who this quote is from. Nelson Mandela from South Africa, who spent 27 years in prison under apartheid for fighting racial inequality. He advocated for the right of black South Africans to vote, which was denied under apartheid laws. He became the country's first black president in 1994 after the first fully democratic election. Another of the most well-known activists here would be no other than Martin Luther King Jr. He led the civil rights movement in the 1960s, where he fought for African Americans' right to vote, especially in the southern states, where discriminatory laws blocked them. Eventually, he was assassinated in 1968 for his activism. Nevertheless, he succeeded in many ways. For instance, the Selma to Montgomery marches led by him led directly to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Taking a look at the UK means acknowledging suffragettes. Women like Emmeline Pankhurst and Emily Davison passionately fought for women's right to vote. Many were arrested, force-fed in prison, and publicly shamed. Emily Davison herself even died after stepping in front of the King's horse in 1913, becoming the major symbol of the movement. Their motto, deeds, not words. Let us remember Aung San Suu Kyi from Myanmar, who spent 15 years under house arrest for promoting democracy and fair elections in Myanmar. Though her later political role became controversial, her early life shows the risk many take just to fight for fair elections. At last, we should not forget about the Peterloo massacre, which took place in Manchester, 1819. In this grave moment of our history, peaceful and innocent activists demonstrating for reforms concerning voting rights and governmental changes were brutally injured and killed because of their courage to stand up for their cause. These people and millions more believed voting wasn't just a right, but a responsibility. They paid a price so others, just like many of us, could have a say.
The current voting laws in the UK before the law including 16-year-olds were as follows. You must be a registered voter, over 18, be a UK citizen or a registered overseas voter, or have a registered UK address. The UK is not the only country to include 16-year-olds in the vote. No, in 2014, Scotland, with the Scottish independence referendum, included 16-year-olds, and ever since 2015, 16-year-olds has had their say.
But it is most likely, in the next election, that every single one of you will be given the right to vote. In accordance with Labour's 2024 manifesto, 1.5 million 16 to 17-year-olds will be enfranchised. But this isn't a new idea. Many a country has done the same. In Austria in 2008, Scotland 2014, Malta 2009, and Brazil in 1988. And in 2029, many of you will go out and vote. And many of you will be informed, and you will be ready. But some of you will be scared. Who should I vote for, you may ask? Which party best represents me? And should I listen to my friends, my teachers, or make my own opinions? These are all good questions, and ones that sadly I nor anyone else can answer for you. Finding out what you believe is a difficult task, and a science of one. Perhaps you will find out what ideas speak to you whilst reading about Big Brother or Kino and his pearl in the realms of literature. Perhaps you will find out what irks you through TV with Jamie Miller in Adolescence or David Attenborough in Planet Earth. Or perhaps you will find someone saying something that you know to be cruel, and in that moment, silence is a lie. No, it doesn't matter how you go about being inquisitive and learning about our nation, our politics. What matters is that you bother to be bothered by things in the first place, and that we as a school fight the enemy that is indifference. Indifference itself is the biggest threat to our democracy. Indifference leads too many young people to turn away from politics and stay home on election day. In our generation, there are more eligible voters than in any other, which means that if we aren't indifferent, and if we do show up, we will have more power than anyone else before us to change things.
So far we've talked about the right to vote, but what happens when people don't use it? Let's look at some real numbers. In the 2019 UK general election, about 32 million people voted. However, this was only 67.3% of all people who are eligible. This means that a shocking 14 million registered voters did not vote at all. In the same year, turnout for ages 18 to 24 was even lower at just around 47%. This is less than half of youth voters. If we look towards older age groups, focusing around people over the age of 65, usually around 75% of registered voters cast their say. In other words, the people who have to live the longest as a result of these elections, young people, are often the least likely to vote. But why is this? Many young people are put off voting due to lack of trust in politicians, feeling their vote will not matter, not feeling informed enough, and thinking nothing will change. The problem is that if you don't vote, your voice will not be heard. Decisions will still be made just without your input. Every vote matters because in tight elections, just a few thousand votes can swing a seat, and non-voters can end up giving more power to those who do actually show up. The most dangerous phrase in democracy is, "My vote doesn't matter," because that's how the power slips away.
Clearly, we see that this ongoing debate over lowering the voting age is significant. As society continues to evolve, so too does the conversation around who should have a say in shaping it. Let's first look at some of the positives. 16-year-olds in society today are already contributing in meaningful and tangible ways. They work, care for siblings, help support families, and more. They can be, in some situations, taxpayers and can even be part of the armed forces. Shouldn't they get a say on how their taxes are spent and their country run? Furthermore, outdated stereotypes are still making us believe that young people are not involved with politics, but this is completely the opposite. Many are deeply engaged with contemporary social and political issues. To list a few: climate change, mental health, racial justice, education. These are all headline issues which can directly affect young people as much as any other group. Beyond these reasons, giving young people voting rights helps build democracy. Voting habits and responsibility are carried throughout their lives when they start young. Surely this would be what we want and need as a society in order to remain democratic in the future. However, not everyone agrees. Some argue that 16-year-olds aren't mature enough to vote responsibly or are too impressionable, which to an extent could be true, and certainly is a valid argument. Although, when we consider lack of widespread political education, we could perhaps see why this may be the case. Instead of shutting off their rights to vote entirely, we should focus on giving them broad and unbiased teaching to help them engage instead. Others worry that lowering the voting age would politicise schools. They worry that introducing discussions about voting and political issues into the classroom may influence decisions or create spaces for tensions to arise. It's also worth acknowledging, though, that many aspects of education are directly influenced by and linked to politics. This raises the question about the role of schools in preparing young people to engage with society around them. While there are other strengths and weaknesses to the debate, it is certainly an important one to be had.
We're all here today because of education, whether to receive it or to impart your knowledge to others. Throughout history, people have thought that other human beings should not have that basic human right, believed it to be wrong or unnecessary. But we have changed. The evolution of education included allowing girls to have the same opportunity as boys, and people of all races and ethnicities to learn together in a positive environment. These are things once thought impossible. So for those who believe that we can't teach children about voting and politics, you're wrong. We are already finding ways to educate on such a sensitive topic, but these are mostly self-driven. A podcast, for example, whilst entertaining, can only inform those who want to learn. At 16, we should begin developing our own political views, rather than adopting those of the adults around us. Voting is a personal responsibility, and we should make sure that our opinion is from our own personal beliefs. Schools should aim to educate students on the political landscapes and their right within that system, and perhaps more importantly, impress the need for the younger generations to have an interest in learning about the political spectrum, differing ideologies and key concepts. Because if there is no thirst for education at an early age, it is unlikely that an interest will grow, and that interest is necessary. People have lost their lives, their families and friends, fighting for justice, fighting for the right to vote. And there are still people around the world who can't. You've been gifted with an opportunity, even if you can't see that. You will hear the phrase, every vote counts, and it would be a fool to ignore it. Our world is shaped off the votes given by everyday people, and when you bury your head in the sand, decide that a vote doesn't involve you, that is the time when the power shifts from your hands and the rights people have died for are lost. So don't leave your fate for those who care nothing for it. Vote for what you think is right, for what you believe in, and the world may become a better place yet.